Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari.
And I'm Stacy Moore.
Stacy, what movie are we going to overanalyze this week?
This week we're going with Steven Soderbergh's latest caper and return from retirement, Logan Lucky. West Virginia family man Jimmy Logan, played by Channing Tatum, teams up with his one-armed brother Clyde, Adam Driver, to steal money from the Charlotte Motor Speedway, North Carolina. Jimmy also recruits demolition expert Joe Bang, a.k.a. introducing Daniel Craig, to help them break into the track's underground system.
Cool. What'd you think?
I was relieved to have some lighter fare.
Yeah. We've been in some heavy waters lately.
We have. It's been sort of a depressing venture for us to watch movies lately that matter. But this was very fun. It was a fun heist movie, right? Buddy movie.
Yes.
Ensemble cast. But I could never stop watching myself watch it. I never felt like I was really just sort of swept up in the fun of the movie. I was constantly analyzing the director's choices the whole time.
Okay. But, I mean, don't you kind of put that brain on for movies that matter regardless?
That's a great question. I think that's a valid question. I don't think I normally do as much.
Okay.
And it could have been, and what we'll get into, of course, it could have been the characters, the setting. I may have been on high alert.
Okay.
But that could be why. But yeah, I never quite lost myself in it.
Okay. I feel like sometimes too, I mean, if I don't know there's going to be a twist, then I'm just not paying attention for it. And it's always like, oh my goodness. But if you tell me there's going to be a twist, or like I know, and then with Steven Soderbergh, like you knew there was going to be a plot behind the plot kind of aspect to it. So I think that does kind of keep you like, ooh, what's going to happen next kind of territory. I agree with you. I don't find Channing Tatum to be quite enough of a lead to suck me in.
Really?
Like, he's good. And in like an Ocean's 11 quite thing, he would have mixed well with everybody else. But by force of personality alone to carry a movie, I don't think he quite has it. And Adam Driver is just came off as weird. I don't know. Like, he did a good job. He was supposed to be weird. But definitely the Bang brothers at all, like, all three of them are the most fun to be had in this movie. And Daniel Craig, everyone's talking about it, so we'll just say it here, too. Like, he was great. I've always known he was a good and versatile actor, and it was really fun.
I did not realize that about Daniel Craig. I'd only ever seen him in, what was it, Layer Cake and the Bond movie and Lara Croft.
Okay.
I'd only ever seen him be the kind of like, I don't know, toughened British guy with a gun.
Okay.
So this was completely new for me. I had no idea the man had it in him.
Okay, well, when we get there, that's going to tie into my recommendation for this for this episode. Okay. But there's a lot to unpack about this movie. Should we start with the most obvious point? Accents.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Do we want to grade each of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we just go ahead and give the F to Seth MacFarlane?
That character was atrocious.
He should have been written out of the movie. This might be one of the cases where, the new model where the director has complete control. Somebody needed to be like, you could do this entire movie without this character.
Steve!
Like, he literally had nothing, didn't advance the plot in any way, shape, or form, and was awful. And with knowing that a real English person was also in this movie was, like, even worse, because Daniel Craig must have been crying in his trailer, right? Like, what is this dude doing? He's totally butchering this accent.
And he wasn't even annoying in the way that he wasn't like annoying in a scene chewing way where you love to hate him, where he's just sort of like this like off-the-wall character and you respect the performance and da-da-da. No, he was just plain annoying. Like, you're just like, I don't want to look at this guy anymore. I don't want to hear him. I don't know why we're paying any attention to him.
Yeah, literally, it just created some obstacles in the plot. But again, if you wrote him out of the movie would be exactly the same. Like, he was totally... Nothing hinged on him being in it.
No.
All right. Anybody we're going to give an A accent to?
I guess I'll give a C+ to Channing Tatum because I just never noticed it.
Okay.
Everyone else, I was kind of like, they're speaking a country accent.
But they were all speaking the same country accent, which at least was like a plus to films set in the South, where everybody just sort of picks their own Southern accent. I've seen that phenomenon, and I'm like, it's interesting that this character is from Georgia and this character is from Texas, and they're supposed to be brothers, like, because they just randomly picked a different Southern accent to put on, and you're like, that's right. That's
or like
cool.
Tom Hanks in was it Lady Killers, where he actually had an accent from like 150 years ago.
Yeah.
He sounded like the KFC Colonel.
Yeah.
And like, no one talks like that anymore.
Right. And yeah, as someone who you are in fact a Southerner, so I'm like, this is good because you've got like a Southerner and a Yankee to do this podcast, but I'm like,
sure, yeah.
I lived in the South and I got familiar enough with Southern accents from hearing them that I'm always like put off by the fact that everybody thinks they can do a Southern accent and very rarely do they get it right. So
I will remark, there was a scene or two where Daniel Craig slips into a gay man's Southern accent.
Yeah?
Did you see?
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a very specific accent.
Yeah, that passed me over.
And it was maybe just one or two scenes where I went, he suddenly became a gay Southern man.
Yeah.
Like, but only for a minute, and then he was straight again.
Yes.
I was like, I mean, fine, but it was just very, like, it was jarring for me. I went, oh, weird. Okay.
So, yeah, you're just like, if you're not Southern, don't do a Southern movie. Like, just don't.
Thank you. And that's, I feel like
you don't have the cred to pull it off.
Yeah.
And you won't. I mean, and we'll get back to more of the, like, Southern stuff as we get into the social issue thing. So on the flip side of the, like, atrocious accents, I will commend the movie for having no one looked Hollywood in this movie. Like, actually people looked like regular people. They made, like, I don't know if they made Channing Tatum gain weight, but
he did.
He did.
Yeah.
The love interest wasn't, like, super pretty, like Hollywood pretty. She looked like just a normal pretty girl. Like, I really appreciate the, like, not Hollywooding up of people who are supposed to be, like, regular folk in West Virginia. Like, I thought that was good. Like, people weren't too glam. And he said it was, like, the anti-glam version. I did like the self-referential.
Say it.
This is Ocean's 7-Eleven. And I thought the whole Game of Thrones thing was hilarious.
I kept wondering if I would have laughed more if I had watched the show.
Well, probably. I'm not a fan either, but the whole, like...
The concept of it.
In the movie, they stage a prison riot, and one of their demands is they want the new books in the series of Game of Thrones. And then the warden's like, no, that book hasn't actually been published yet. And then the leader is like, no, that's BS. Like, I've seen, like, the show is, like, advanced, and they're like, yeah, well, they advanced the show, but there were beyond the books. Yeah. Like, there were publication delays. Like,
what was it? George R. Martin was, like, snowed in or something. He's like, no, my friend Jamal, he's talking about some Princess and Dragons. I'm actually, like, enjoying us, like, discussing this now more than when I actually watched it. I found there were, like, a lot of moments where I wanted to be laughing more than I was actually laughing.
Okay.
And that was one of them, where I was like, oh, that's empirically funny. Like, intellectually, I find that humorous.
I'm glad it's funny when I retell it, though.
Yeah, I was actually, it is funnier. When Nicole reenacts it, I don't know, but yeah, there were other moments in the movie like that, too, where I was like, I think the only times I really laughed were when Daniel Craig was kind of doing his thing.
Okay.
But otherwise, I would just go, that's funny.
Yeah, no, you were saying, like, you couldn't connect to it.
Right.
I would say also, like, a huge pacing problem. It just ground to a halt after the robbery, and everything that happened after it was like, is this movie over yet? Is this movie over yet? Like, the Hilary Swank thing was boring. She didn't know what she was doing in this movie.
No, what was that voice?
She was weird and awkward.
It was awkward, you're right.
And I'm like, I was like trying to think back on Hilary Swank's career, and I was like, she kind of nailed it in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so I know she can do comedy. So I'm like, I don't know. Soderbergh doesn't usually make bad directorial choices with his actors. So I was surprised at how poorly that came off. But it was just boring.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say that the movie was terrible. I know the way I'm talking about it. I know the way I'm talking about it, it sounds like I really hated it. I did not really hate it. It was fine.
A year from now, catch it on TBS.
There you go.
Like,
yeah.
That's the most it deserves. I think it's hard. Out of Sight is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time, if not top 5 favorite movies of all time. I haven't actually calculated it. But, like, I love that movie. I love that movie, The 5,000 Suns. It's super dark and violent, and I still watch it over and over again. So I think, too, like, knowing it was Steven Soderbergh really set it up for failure in that sense. Like, you just expect a caliber of technical proficiency, like a pacing problem, just not to occur, right? Like, you're like, this isn't some rinky-dink new director on the scene where you're like, I can forgive some production mistake. You know what I mean? I think with Steven Soderbergh, like, the bar is necessarily going to be high, and I don't think he met it.
Right. I wonder what was kind of what motivated this for him, because this is, cinebuffs will know that he, quote unquote, retired, kind of the way Celine Dion retires occasionally, maybe 4 years ago or so, or 10 years ago, I forget. And now he's back, and he's claimed, like, I'm only going to do the movies I want to do now for fun. I'm in this for love of the game. I don't want to do any more, heavy Oscar bait, think piece. I want to do fun stuff. And so I don't know if this is just him kind of not trying, like I'm just here to enjoy myself. Here's what I made.
Again, I mean, I think this is going to be a controversial opinion, but I think there is a double-edged sword of giving a director complete control. You are not, like, just to the written word, for most of us who have to write anything for work, like, you're not a good editor or proofreader of your own stuff. I wonder at some point, I get why he didn't want to keep in the studio system, but I don't know how much you can see your own mistakes. Like, he should have been able to see that Seth MacFarlane was a terrible choice and added nothing to this movie.
And he apparently runs the camera.
He does everything.
He doesn't let anyone else in.
And I think there's something to be said for someone saying, for a writer having an editor. I think a collaborative process works better, and I just wonder if this just got away from him. He put everything he thought was cool in it and then didn't realize it didn't hang together very well. And also Seth MacFarlane is not
poison.
Yeah, I mean, he's just
to this movie.
Awful.
Yeah.
I just don't. He has no redeeming value to me. Like, I really dislike Seth MacFarlane.
He was, like, repugnant to look at.
He's just. I don't like any of his stuff.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Oh, you don't like anything he does?
No.
I think a lot of people do. Like, I think he's very popular in a lot of ways, but I don't think anyone thought that this performance was fun.
Yeah.
So take that.
Yes.
Take that.
I do like one last like movie note message.
Okay.
I'm just curious to see if we're in agreement. Like, what did you make of the ending? So in the ending, like, they do the heist, and the whole movie is about the family, the Logan family having this curse on them. Nothing ever goes right for them. And in the end, they kind of get away with it. And then the last scene, Hilary Swank, who's been pulled off the case, the FBI agent, is like sitting in the bar when they're celebrating having pulled off this robbery.
My reaction was, what? Fine.
Because you were so disengaged.
I was like, what is she... Is she going rogue and she's gonna, get them herself? has she decided to hook up with Adam Driver and get some of the money? Do I care? No.
Okay. Yeah, I took it as like in the end she was going to get them. That the curse was real and they weren't actually going to be able to get away with it.
Oh, all right. That's a good ending if that's the ending.
Yeah. So, not much more to say about this as a movie. It really just wasn't. It was adequately done in a lot of areas. So, but I was curious. Again, nice to have the diversity of geography here. So there are a couple of big things in this movie that were signifiers of class / culture / stereotypes of rednecks.
Yeah.
And the treatment of them were kind of different, which I thought was interesting.
Yes.
So you have the daughter is in like some sort of little Miss Virginia pageant, so it gets a little bit into pageant culture.
Yep. Yeah, it does, which is very prevalent in the South.
And John Denver featured
all
prominently
over this movie. Yeah.
So, which was interesting because they didn't go for like straight country music, like John Denver is a little bit on that line. And then there was, I felt, a very pointed critique of our military worship.
I didn't take it as critique.
Okay, so that was what I was going to ask.
Ironic to me, yeah.
I was going to ask I thought where did you count anything else? Is there anything I'm missing?
There were lots of there was a lot of sort of the country culture paraphernalia, right?
The toilet seat horseshoes.
Yeah, exactly. At the agricultural fair, they're at like the county fair.
And NASCAR in and of itself.
Absolutely. NASCAR, hurrah for the troops, LeAnn Rimes, and this is where
you're right.
I actually, my southernness, and I'm not saying I am not country culture, and I would never presume to count myself to identify that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I am technically and in some ways actually from the South.
I mean,
I was born in Georgia, and I spent my adolescence there, and half my family is from there, and that's where I spent all my Christmases growing up, and you know what I mean? So
I will quote somebody who said to me when I called somebody a Southerner, "Oh, if you're not 8th generation Southern, honey, you ain't Southern."
Oh.
So I don't know if you meet that bar.
I actually am certified by Ancestry.com as being descended from the first colonists.
There you go.
So you're right.
Oh, good. Inmates, right?
Georgia colony. Thank you. Or just like maybe sentenced to transportation for life. We're not sure. But
someone stole from the master in your family and got shipped to the Americas.
That is entirely possible. Or kicked out for being political dissidents. We're not.
Yeah. There you go. Totally. I'm sure you were political dissidents, Stacey. Pretty it up all you want.
I'm going with that. Other than otherwise just being poor and needing to leave. So when LeAnn Rimes is singing the Star Spangled Banner, I did get a little I didn't get verklempt, but my heart swelled just maybe like half a size or two.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that girl can sing. That girl can sing. And it's, the Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem is, obviously one of those great sort of vocal feats. And to hear LeAnn Rimes singing it was really nice. And seeing the soldiers saluting. And I was unironically slightly moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I thought that this movie really didn't want to come across as either ironic or critical of all of these things. I thought that they played the pageant straight, where, you could have gone into Little Miss Sunshine territory and you didn't. I thought so the little girl, Channing Tatum's daughter in the movie, sings the West Virginia John Denver song. I assume it's called West Virginia, but I actually don't know.
These Country Roads.
Country Roads.
Yeah.
Okay. Not well. which I really appreciated. Like, I'm glad they didn't, like, again, they didn't Hollywood it up. She didn't come out where she, like, I don't know, what, she was like 7 years old. Sure. She wasn't like a stunning singer, so I was like, good for you. But, like, I did find that scene really affecting where she sings it. Yeah. And then, to me, that's where I got moved. And everybody in the audience who's from West Virginia starts singing along, like, this is our home and this means something to us.
It was moving, right? And it is a song about returning to where you're from, right? Right. And being proud of where you're from.
Right.
So to your point, I like to combine refer to a couple things you said and back them up, is that while this wasn't Hollywood glammed, mm-hmm. it did glamorize country culture. Okay. In the same ways that his other movies glamorize, that heist movies will glamorize Las Vegas or Monaco in a very unrealistic way. Mm-hmm. I felt everything was shiny. Everything, like, was meant to look, like, appealing mm-hmm. and kind of just fantastic, right? Like, being at the NASCAR rally, it was all very glamorous, mm-hmm. right? And even him, like, working at the beginning of the movie in the underground in the construction site, it doesn't look like he's dragging himself out of a coal mine. He looks like he's just happily working. Right. Right. And the whole movie had that sort of respectful, if unrealistic in the way that all, Hollywood movies feel of just look how fun and lovely this existence, this culture is. Don't you want to be like them? Don't you want to be a part of this? And the characters were all intelligent. Right? Mm-hmm. Almost every character gets like a monologue about where they get to elaborate on a very esoteric topic mm-hmm. in a very fast, like, Good Will Hunting sort of way. And Daniel Craig even gets to, like, chalk out.
That is such a pet peeve of yours. I know it. Yeah. With the writing on the chalkboard.
Yeah. Where he's, like, writing out, like, chemical equations for the, the Logan boys. And even the little girl gets to talk about mechanics for a minute. And so everyone.
And nose and needle nose pliers and a flathead.
Thank you. So they're all treated respectfully. It's all, very positive. At the same time, it felt like Hollywood people making a movie about red state people. Mm-hmm. Where it was like, it made me realize the importance of own voices. Right. Where it's like, no, I don't want to see Channing Tatum doing a Southern accent. I don't want to see, well, maybe Daniel Craig, because that was pretty funny. But, like, I want to see a movie written by Southern people, performed by country people. Like, Michael Rooker mm-hmm. is one of the only examples, really, of someone from the country who has a country accent who has made it in Hollywood and is he's at least B-list now and he's in big movies and he gets to be country characters in mm-hmm. Walking Dead or the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And he's a hit. People love him. People love that guy. But there's no one else like that. Everyone else, it's like, they're all from, where Hollywood, and they're all pretending to be. It's almost like redneck face.
Yeah. No, I think it is. And so it's interesting, and I'll cop to my own, lens there too. Although, as I tell people, I did spend 4 years in college working for the Center for the Study of the American South. I spent 4 years keeping Southern culture alive.
Doing the Lord's work.
Yeah. So
good on you.
But I agree. Like, I think you're right. I think that's maybe why it felt so inauthentic. Like, people who are not from that culture really don't know how to talk about it. And I was glad that it wasn't overly critical, although I read all the scenes of militarism at NASCAR as a critique. Oh, I did. I read it as a critique. And so one of the characters is a vet and mm-hmm. had lost his hand. Not his arm. And the whole thank you for your service, which is meaningless. I do think he was trying to say, like, worshiping the military is somewhat meaningless in the face of, like, the fact that we don't take care of them or protect them we don't actually mean that. We have all these big militaristic displays and then leave the vets hanging. So,
I did like how he got a much nicer arm. Yeah. At the end, he had, like, a robot, like, NASA arm.
Yeah, that was cool.
After their take, right?
Yeah, but And you know, it's interesting too, like putting it in the context of everything that's been going on lately. This movie was made actually a while ago, and it's like, you know, the whole Southern culture is under assault these days. And what do you do with this sort of weird mix of, you know, I think you said it way long time ago, and when we recorded Zootopia, that like redneck is the last like acceptable form. Like, it's the last slur you're sort of able to use. Like, and now you have all these people who are defending quote-unquote Southern culture, and it's so intimately tied up with racism that it's really hard to separate the two. And you're left either being uncritical, like this movie, or overly critical. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a very fine line to walk. And I imagine it's difficult for people who identify with that culture, who are members of that culture. And, you know, they maybe don't feel that they're racist or sexist, but are so deep in a culture that surrounds them with all this baggage that, you know, it's who says like these Confederate generals are, you know, fighting for slavery as part of our culture. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to reject my culture. And if that's part of my culture, I guess I won't reject it. But I'm not pro-slavery. I'm just pro people that fought and died for it.
Yeah.
That's gotta be a tough thing to grapple with and to parse out, I would imagine.
I think it is. And I think that Southerners have been the butt of a lot of jokes and a lot of derision from the rest of the country for a really long time, which is undeserved. Like, I remember, I didn't realize how, like, regional education was until I went to school, like, way out of the region, and I was the only person in any, like, class who hadn't read Faulkner. And I was like, oh, I was reading Melville. And they were like, who now?
Right.
And I'm like,
right.
Oh, I guess
Thank
I'm
you.
from the Northeast, so I read a bunch of Melville, and you're from the South, so you read
Rose
Faulkner.
for Emily.
Yeah.
Rose for Emily, you guys. Yeah.
So, you know, I don't want to denigrate Southern culture. Like, I think there's a lot of really good stuff. Country culture, I'm a city mouse. Like, I got no time. And not that I want to denigrate country culture. I'm just saying, like, I'm with you. Like, I'm not in it. I've never been a part of it. It doesn't interest me. But I do think we're at this sort of crossroads of like, how do we get ourselves out of this? Like, how do we respect Southern culture and all the wonderful things that it produced? And frankly, if you have a drawl, but not a twang, glorious Southern accents, which I love with my whole heart. And I moved to the South to get one, like
to adopt it.
Yes.
It, yeah.
I had a friend who was from Wichita Falls, and anytime he wanted to get me to do anything, he'd just look at me and he'd go, Nicole, darling. And I'm like, oh, okay. My knees would melt. Like, I just was like, yes, I'll follow you wherever you want to go. Like,
whatever you need.
I was like so hot, and he did say it only worked on Yankee girls. Like,
I hear the British go nuts for it.
I mean, it's just gorgeous every time. I love it. I don't keep your accent alive. So I don't know what the way out is.
I doubt there is one. I can't. I mean, I can't imagine, like, barring just the accent. The accent seems to be dying out, right? The old time Southern accent is actually dead. It's gone. Like that Scarlett O'Hara, like,
it was actually English. I mean,
not Vivian Leigh.
Vivian Leigh, yeah. Like hilariously also an English actress.
There you go. And I wonder if eventually the country accent and the culture will die out too. I'm not saying it should. I'm saying I'm worried it will. It's just a matter of the mainstreaming, the sort of globalization of the world and America by extent. I hope that doesn't happen. But assuming it doesn't, that will leave all the baggage that comes with it. That will leave just these two cultures that are, you know, red and blue, that are just so different, and we just can't seem to meet in the middle. That's a problem. I don't have a solution for it.
It is a problem. But I think, too, like you were saying earlier, when you look at a movie, I mean, pageant culture is what it is, but it's really hard from an outside perspective.
It's disgusting.
To see a little girl in, like, midriff bearing and, like, you know,
and that
thick liquid eyeliner, like, it's disturbing.
Yeah, and that first close-up shot of her where she comes out on stage and, it was just, like, abrupt, like full-on close-up, and she just looks garish.
Yeah.
She's this adorable 7-year-old girl, and she looks like nightmare, demon-possessed Kristen Chenoweth doll.
Oh, yes, Kristen Chenoweth doll. I totally agree with you.
Right?
Yeah, and so it's like, I think it's hard. It's hard to not see the dysfunction, which isn't to say there isn't dysfunction in all kinds of cultures.
Right, yeah. That's
know.
messed up. That's a hot mess. Dressing up girls like they're older than 18 and having them prance around and do... I'm sorry, that's not good. That's not good. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm full on against that.
But, I mean, on top of that, like, I was super perturbed by the sister character always having her bra exposed. I was like, put some clothes on. She was always wearing, like, a see-through shirt, or, like, the buttons were undone to, like, where you could see her bra, and I'm like, put up, like... Oh,
come on. And then she winds up with Daniel Craig, who's, like, 3 times her age at the end of it. I was like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Really.
But, yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that I wish... The whole movie felt like someone, Steven Soderbergh, sat down and went, what would rednecks like to see? What would they want to see here? And just sort of brainstorming that and then filming it, as opposed to actually involving anyone from the South or Appalachia or the country or wherever, actually involving them in the conception process. And that's so, like, I remember that being an issue when Sweet Home Alabama came out. Mm-hmm. I was like, nobody from the South was involved with this movie. This movie is ridiculous. It was like, someone put it really well. They were like, it was as if a bunch of white people made a movie about Native Americans and everyone stood around saying, how? Yeah. Like, it was just dumb. This one tried a little harder, but that's all it was trying hard. You know? I just wish there were more people from the South involved in these projects to make it more authentic.
I agree.
Sigh.
Yeah.
Will that ever happen? I don't know. Maybe not.
Should we give it a social impact score and call it a day?
Sure.
Do you have anything else social issue wise?
For example, it was like Soderbergh said, "Oh, I know what they would love to hate: a British guy, a guy who does yoga and eats sushi,
yes,
and a federal agent, someone from DC."
Yep.
You know, like, so it was all there. Even the stereotypes of what rednecks would want to hate, was in there as well.
One last thing before we go to the social impact score. Did you catch the closing message of the film?
No.
I stayed all the way through to the credits. I did think this was funny. So there is like a closing, like the final screen of the movie says, "This is a work of fiction. Nobody got robbed during the making of this film. Except you." And I was like, oh, that was funny. I wonder how many, like, I didn't see that in any reviews. I'm like, I don't know how many people stayed all the way to the end.
I don't think they did. Yeah. I thought about it for a second and then went, nope, and got up and walked out.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Sometimes I sit through the credits while I'm sort of jotting down some notes to talk about the podcast.
I'm glad you did.
Yes. So that might have been the best part. Like, where we were like, we had 2 movies in a row where the best part was the opening titles. Like, this is the closing credit, which no one saw. So you want to explain the scale?
Let's do it. Social impact score on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being it changed nothing, 10 being the world we once knew was gone forever. What do you give it?
I mean, a 1.
I have 1. Yeah, I was gonna say 1.
Yeah,
it's fine.
We couldn't even drag out our discussion of Southern culture to.
I know.
Make. Yeah. Welcome to the abbreviated Movies That Matter,
right.
End of summer edition, where there's nothing left to see.
That's right. Bring on award season.
Yes.
Right?
Although if I see that Marshall trailer one more time, it's like making me hate the movie because I'm like, I've seen this trailer so many times because you have nothing else to promote. Speaking of promotion, Recommendations for the week?
I would like to recommend that it's the season for it, and it was referenced in the movie. Go out, find your local agricultural fair. The nearest one to you. They're happening right now. You know, it's such a mainstay of like of rural cultures.
I believe the DC State quote unquote state fair is this week as well. Actually,
you're kidding.
Although by the time this airs, it'll be over. But there is a DC like county fair. It's a thing.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to the Frederick Fair.
Woohoo!
Yeah, exactly. And they're going on. Go do it. It's a good old time.
Yeah, well, have some fried dough for me.
Okay.
I'm going to recommend, if you have not seen the brilliant English comedian Catherine Tate, the Catherine Tate Show is A, hilarious, but B, she has an episode that Daniel Craig is actually in. And the whole premise of the skit, which is so freaking funny because I feel this way about Daniel Craig, is like they meet on online dating and his handle's like Bondboy227 or something. And she's like this like overweight, middle-aged woman. Like, you know, they really play up the spinster bit. And then she meets him and she's like, I don't know. Everybody says he's this famous actor, but I don't see it. She doesn't find him attractive at all.
Right.
And he's like super into her and she's just sort of like going along with it. So like that's Daniel Craig doing comedy. They're hilarious. Everything about the Catherine Tate Show is hilarious. They're all on YouTube. Find it.
I'll check it out.
Do it.
That's an order.
Yes. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you did, please take a second to leave a review on iTunes. We need new reviews.
Yes,
we need some new ones. Come on out and tell us how much you liked or didn't like us.
We're
we
feeling
honestly
insecure.
don't care.
No,
we are.
we're just contradicting each other.
No, we are feeling. We prefer you to say that you liked us.
Right. Yeah.
I figure if you made it to this point in the podcast, we didn't do so bad.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you for listening. P.S.
Yeah. Check out our website at www.moviesthatmatterpodcast.com for links to things we've discussed, and they'll be in the show notes. And if you want to talk to us, leave a comment on our Facebook page or on Twitter with our tag @MoviesMatterPod. Also check Twitter to find out what movie Stacy is doing for our next episode. I will be in Bhutan, so I'm going to be taking a break and leaving all the fun work to Stacy. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.